What's going on, everybody? It's ETAPRIME back here again. Today we're going to be taking a look at and testing out the most powerful Linux gaming PC that we've ever put together over here on the channel. Now this thing is an absolute beast. We've got 16 Zen 4 cores and a massive 7000 series Radeon GPU. And of course, when I say Linux gaming, personally I really love the operating system that the Steam Deck uses, so we're using something very similar here known as ChimeraOS. Basically, when we boot this up, it's going to take us right into big picture mode, otherwise known as gamepad UI mode. Looks exactly the same as the Steam Deck, but we've got a lot more power we can work with here because we can do 4K on AAA games over 100 FPS, and this thing just doesn't stop. I mean, I was really surprised by the performance here, and when it comes to Linux gaming, I'm a huge fan. Usually when we do kind of a little Steam Deck OS build, it's on a mini PC or something a lot smaller, lot less powerful, but I figured we'd go ahead and test it out on kind of a high-end PC here. When it comes to the specs of the rig we put together here, for the CPU, we've got the AMD Ryzen 9 7950X, 16 cores, 32 threads. Remember, all 16 cores here are Zen 4. We've got a base clock of 4.5 GHz and a boost up to 5.7. This is going to be cooled by a Corsair Hydro Series H115i all-in-one liquid cooler. I've got 32 gigabytes of Kingston Fury DDR5 running at 6400 MHz. Graphics are going to be handled by an AMD Radeon RX 7900 XTX. This is the ASRock Tai Chi overclock version, and with this we get 24 gigabytes of VRAM and a boost clock up to 2680 MHz. This actually works really well with the latest kernel for Linux, and I've been seeing some amazing performance. Everything's going to be running from a 2TB Kingston Fury NVMe SSD. The whole system is powered by an EVGA 750-watt G7 PSU, and I would have loved to use kind of an 850, but I already had this ready to go in the box, so I figured I'd go ahead and use it here, and I haven't run into any issues yet. And for the case, we've got the NWin A5. Now, like I mentioned, when it comes to gaming on Linux, I love Steam Deck OS or SteamOS 3, but unfortunately Valve has not released it to the public for any other hardware other than the Steam Deck itself. Now, there are some developers out there that have kind of ported SteamOS 3 over, but for this rig and all of my other Linux gaming machines, I've been using ChimeraOS. Super easy to install. Everything you need for a great Linux gaming rig is here in the operating system. You're just going to flash it to a USB drive and install it to whatever other drive you want. Lots of great compatibility. Rolling OTA updates, and with the latest unstable build, I've been seeing a nice bump in performance on that RX 7900 XTX. If you're interested in downloading this or just learning a little more, I'll leave a link to the official Chimera website in the description. And keep in mind, with the latest releases of ChimeraOS, once you get this installed and booted up, it's going to look just like the Steam Deck's operating system, so we get all those bells and whistles and a really nice interface for launching our games. So we'll go ahead and get this started, and as you can see, it's going to boot directly into gamepad UI, at least that's what I still call it. If you take a look at my performance overlay, it's kind of taking up the whole left side of the screen, and that's because we've got 32 cores here with this Ryzen 7950X. So, having that performance overlay does take up a bit of space, but you can actually minimize it a bit if you need to. I'm just going to leave it on screen while gaming so we can see exactly what's going on with everything. But yeah, very snappy on this system, and I expected it would be. We've got a lot of great games to test here, but what I'm going to do is just plug this into my game capture so we can get a better look at everything. While we're gaming, all the information we need to know about this system is going to be listed in the performance overlay on the left-hand side, and I'm going to disable it right now so it's not blocking everything out. And with ChimeraOS, we get all of the great little features built in with SteamOS, like system-wide FSR. We can change our refresh rate right on the fly. We get that performance overlay. The only thing we can't change from the menu here is the TDP on this system here. Some of these games actually do perform better in Linux than they do on Windows, and vice versa. Taking a look at our system specs, scrolling down here, you can see that we've got that AMD Ryzen 9 7950X, 16 cores, 32 threads, 32 gigabytes of RAM here, and that Radeon RX 7900. We're going to get into a little bit of game testing, but there's one thing I always like to mention here. Now, if I was to start up a game here without changing any of the settings, it's only going to run at 720p, even though I've got this plugged into a 4K monitor with a 4K game capture card. What we need to do is head over to each of these games. We're going to go to our settings, properties, and we want to change that game resolution from default to whatever resolution you want. And from within the game settings, we can now adjust that resolution above 720p. But one thing that really gets me with the Steam Deck itself is just how long it takes to cache these shaders, and it's really because it's got 4 cores and 8 threads with that CPU. This is the first time I've started up Spider-Man Miles Morales on this system, and just take a look at how quick it processes those Vulkan shaders. It is crazy fast, but you can see that we've got a lot of those cores really working. And with something like Doom Eternal, it actually only took about 6 seconds to process those Vulkan shaders. So that's another big plus here. If you've ever tried to play Forza Horizon 5 on the Steam Deck, you know how long it can take for that. This is so quick. Okay, so here we are with Spider-Man Miles Morales. I wanted to show you these settings. We are at 4K, no FSR, very high settings. So we're maxed out here on the display I have. Let me go ahead and turn on this full overlay real quick. Down near the bottom, you'll see our FPS, and with this game, very high, 4K, no resolution scale, we can get an average of around 142 FPS. This is some great performance for Linux. I mean, this is some great performance even for Windows. And I'll tell you what, with this game maxed out at 4K on a good display, it looks absolutely amazing. I mean, definitely trumps the PS5. Moving over to Doom Eternal, 4K Ultra Nightmare, and I've always had really good luck with this game on Linux with no ray tracing. If I turn ray tracing on right now, it actually drops down to an average of around 98. But at 4K Ultra Nightmare, no ray tracing, I can get an average of around 208 FPS out of this game, which is really great. And of course, taking it down to 1440p or 1080 is just going to net us a lot more. I'm a huge fan of Ratchet & Clank. It's actually one of my favorite franchises, so as soon as I heard they were bringing this over to PC, I really wanted to test it in Linux. I've done a full video with this running on the Steam Deck, and performance there isn't bad. But with this setup here, we can go to max settings, 4K with no resolution scale, and get an average of around 141 FPS. So I'd say, yeah, this is another one that's really playable at 4K in Linux. Here's the built-in benchmark for Horizon Zero Dawn, and one weird thing is I actually couldn't get this game to go over 120 FPS. Now we've got enough power here to run this, I'd say at around 140 FPS on average, but by the end of this benchmark, we only had an average of 120, and our maximum there was 120, so I'm not sure what's going on, because the same thing happened with Forza Horizon 5. So I don't know if it's going to be a driver issue or a Proton issue, but right now with Forza Horizon 5, I mean, it's more than playable. We're at 4K, extreme settings, no FSR, and yeah, ray tracing is enabled from the settings. I'm not sure if it works here in Linux or not, but the game looks amazing like this, and it plays just fine. I also wanted to throw in at least one fighting game. We've got Street Fighter 6 maxed out at 4K. I knew it was going to run it at 60 FPS, and you could actually go up to 120 with this setup at 4K if you wanted to. I didn't even bother from the settings because personally I just play my fighting games at 60. As long as I can keep that steady 60, I'm fine with it.
Do you plan to fight at all?
And the final game I wanted to test here for this video was The Last of Us Part 1. This was the only game I had to enable FSR for, and to tell you the truth, at 4K, maxed out, no resolution scale, we did get an average of 64 FPS, but I was kind of afraid that it might dip under when you're in a really intense situation. So I took FSR to quality. We got an average of 81 FPS, and if you've ever tried to run this on your PC, you know how hard this one can be on basically any GPU or CPU combo. So overall, I'm really impressed by the gaming performance this thing's putting out, and of course, I mean, when it comes down to it, we've got some pretty high-end specs here. That Ryzen 9 7950X is a really good chip. It would have been nice to have that X3D, but this is the one I have on hand, and I think it does a really good job. I mean, whether you want to run Windows or Linux. And of course, the Radeon RX 7900 XTX isn't the most powerful card on the market, but it is the most powerful AMD card, and I think it fit in perfect with this setup here. But that's going to wrap it up for this video. Really appreciate you watching, and usually when I do a video like this, I'm using a mini PC or even a lower end PC. I had these parts laying around, so I figured I'd go ahead and put something together, and I think it turned out really, really nice. So if there's anything else you want to see running on this, just let me know in the comments below. I'm also going to leave a link to Chimera's website in case you want to test it out on your own PC. And like always, thanks for watching.